Welcome to Igniting the Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James. Listener, wherever you are in the world right now, just know that there is power in the pause. We talk about this so often to just stop and take a deep breath, bring your hand to your heart for a moment, and breathe into that heart space. Breathe into that space where we are all connected and it connects you to yourself. There's so much power when we allow ourselves to be embodied. So let's take that conscious breath together into our hearts. And I just want to welcome you to such a wonderful show. I'm so excited today. I have my dear friend, my mentor, the incredible George Cappannelli with me today. And George is an award winning author, expert on individual, organizational, and societal change, and a corporate and political consultant. Over the course of the last 40 years, he has served as a campaign manager in both mayoral and U.S. Senate campaigns and a behind the scenes consultant in 3 presidential campaigns. George is also an Emmy award winning film and television producer and director and an award winning sculptor. So grateful and thankful to have you here with us today, George. Welcome to the Spark.
Oh, Stephanie, it's always a pleasure to spend time with you. And uh, you're a gift to your audience, So,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
I'm so excited today. We're going to be talking about George's new book, Conversations with Merlin: Lessons on Life, Leadership, and Noble Governance from the Wizard Who Mentored the Future King. So I'm going to hold this up for people that are on YouTube, and it is available now. George, one of the things I was so blown away with was the process in which this book came to you. 'Cause when I read in the beginning, this book came to you started coming to you about 30 years ago. Can you talk about that experience?
Yes, I was, I was young and I was at that time in my life where I was trying to get a handle on purpose and meaning, and fortunately, I took that opportunity, and uh, I truly believe that we should take that opportunity periodically in our lives to revisit purpose and meaning so that we know whether we're on track or off track or whether there's a new direction or something else that we need to do. So I was at that stage, and I started working with a therapist from the C.G. Jung Institute in New York, and great place. If you're in New York, take advantage of it. It's wonderful. And Jung had always been someone that I admired greatly. I don't know why, actually, except that once I began to explore him, he made more sense than any of the other original starters or founders of psychology and psychiatry. Um, so this therapist introduced me to a process that Jung had developed called the active imagination process. Uh, Fabulous, fabulous process. I've been grateful my whole life since then uh, for it because what Jung believed was that the the things that seem to disturb us, various emotions and things that sometimes get in the way of our lives, everything from anger and depression and sadness and to joy and wonder on the positive side, But he believed that these emotions were like separate entities that reside in our consciousness, and if we dialogue with them, uh, we learn a great deal about why they're in our lives, what they have to teach us. Um, and so the active imagination process, uh, it's like writing a play. You sit down and you ask anger, what do you have to teach me? Or anger, why are you in my life? Or anger, why am I having so much difficulty with you? And then you record the answers that anger gives you, and you record your questions as if you were writing a two-person dialogue for a play. And uh, in the beginning, I felt pretty awkward. Am I making this stuff up? Does it have any relevance? But I began to notice some things. Barbara Hanna was one of Jung's early patients, and she became then a student and then a colleague and a lifetime colleague, along with several others that made the Jung Institute in Switzerland so remarkable. Uh, and Barbara Hanna noted that um, you begin to understand as you record the dialogue that anger has a particular way of talking, a particular kind of syntax that it uses, and you can actually feel an energy while you're talking, not just inside of you, but around you. And so you begin talking to anger, and all of a sudden you feel that there's something's changed, and uh, the more you talk, the more you realize that you're now talking to sadness or despair or depression or a different energy. So I used this process and I learned a ton about myself. But along the way, I also found out that throughout history, an incredible number of extraordinary beings used some version of a process like that. Uh, James Hillman in contemporary times, and Swedenborg and Coleridge, and remarkable people. And I also discovered that Andrew Carnegie used the same process. Mm. And he used to assemble boards of directors made from, comprised of remarkable historical figures that he admired. And they would have these conversations that he would record. And he said that the idea for the steel industry came from one of those conversations.
Wow.
So after a while, I decided to combine Jung's method with Carnegie's. And I thought, well, who in history would I really love to talk about? And I thought, since I was a little kid, uh, Merlin has always been such a magical figure. Arthur and the Round Table and Guinevere and Lancelot and all of that. So I started talking to Merlin. And in the beginning, the same thing happened as when I started talking to the emotions. I kept thinking, is it really possible for me to connect across time and space to an existence that isn't physically manifest? But Stephanie, the more I talked, the more amazed I was at the quality of the content that came to me in the answers, uh, and the fact that I felt such a privilege for having the ability uh, to have these dialogues. So I had 24, and I put them in a notebook and I treasured them. And like all things, I moved from one place to another, and I had no idea where the hell notebooks were. And after we moved to Santa Fe one night, I had a dream, and I woke up with a sense of urgency. So I looked around the house and walked into my office, and I was looking for something to read, anything to read. And I noticed there were a couple of boxes off to the side, and I opened them, and there were all the notebooks with the dialogues on the emotions and the dialogues on the Merlin. And I sat down and I was amazed at what the content was saying, uh, not only about my personal life, but about the world that I was living in. And it was clear that the things that Merlin was talking about were so different than the life that I was seeing around me, the way governments were rising and falling, the amount of turmoil and the loss of character and dignity and honor and truth that contemporary society was evolving. And that's when I realized that these lessons that Merlin had shared with me were not for me. Um, they were for a number of other people that were existing in this time. So that's when I realized I had a book. and began working with it. And it's been a blessing uh, during the whole time of writing and rewriting and fine tuning the chapters. And so now, one of the things that I say on the cover of the book is that um, the wisdom that it contains are not only lessons that uh, Merlin used to tutor a future king, but they're lessons we've forgotten, and that they
Mm.
can do us an enormous amount of good in this time. So that's the process. And I heartily encourage active imagination, Jungian psychology. Look it up, use it, and you won't ever regret it.
Yeah, I told George that just reading the beginning of this book, I was inspired to get Barbara Hannah's book about how to do this active imagination process. Um, Again, I mean, what an incredible process, George, and just to work with this archetype of with Merlin, and to be able to have these conversations where you're not creating it. It's almost like you're asking the question and you're listening and the answer appears.
Yes. And it's why I can speak about the book almost in the third person. Um, I mean, it passed through me, and I know that, as you know, when you're writing, you're an instrument for the collective consciousness as well as your own individual story and whatnot. But it's quite remarkable that I have the level of distance and the level of admiration for the information that came through me.
Well, and let's talk about some of that information.
Sure.
These 21 lessons or 21 laws that came through. Um, what would happen if we followed these laws?
Well, from my standpoint, we'd be in a hell of a lot better shape than we are now. Because I think we live in a world in which we value information a lot, uh, and we don't take the time to differentiate between information and wisdom.
Mm,
Um, wisdom has a much more gravitas to it. It doesn't mean that it's serious, only that it has depth and consequence. But we're so busy taking in, you know, this piece and that piece of information, and we lead our lives based on data and polls and surveys and all the rest of it. Whereas beneath all of that, which is what the wisdom traditions really talk about, and what the indigenous people have preserved for us. There is this fundamental, practical, sound, irrefutable thing that's called wisdom. And the more we tune into it, I think the more life becomes richer and fuller and a lot more stable um, because it's linked to humanity as long as humanity has existed. Um, Whereas information comes and goes. And what Jung used to say is that there's a huge difference between believing and knowing.
mm,
What you know is intrinsically yours, and it comes to you generally from experience and intuition and the imagination that flows through us. Whereas believing, we're basing our actions on things that we've been taught by other people. Um, and so a lot of really wise teachers in the world always say to us, uh, trace the source of the thing that you believe. And
mm.
the fact that you were given that when you were 4 or 10 or 20 or 40 uh, doesn't mean that it still holds true. Whereas knowing is permanent. It doesn't go away.
Well, and I just hear that this difference between living in our heads, which I feel like so much of what you're saying with being bombarded with information and knowledge and all the distraction that our world provides for us, and actually living more as an embodied soul, receiving this information, if you will, from the seat of our soul.
And also through the heart,
Yeah, yes,
as
absolutely.
heart math and Doc Children, everyone. let us know. I mean, there are 40,000 cells in the heart that actually are the heart's brain and they're the body's brain. And this is a different mechanism, um, not to be slighted because it functions at extraordinary capabilities. But I think the truest wisdom that we can live by is the wisdom of the heart.
Love that. Yes. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about some of these lessons and some of the things within the book. Talk a little bit about this crisis of character that we're in right now.
Yeah, it's a crime. I mean, I don't have any other way to describe it. The the moral and ethical fabric of our society has been so disturbed and eroded from my standpoint, and it was one of the things that was blatantly obvious as I began to work with Merlin's laws. Um, uh, and when we look around, the amount of selfishness and greed and corruption and all of the consumption and the materialism and the focus on temporal rewards that are relatively meaningless. You know, I mean, uh, there are so many great people who talk about the difference between what is authentic uh, and unique and what is transitional and temporary. So I think the decline in character in our time, unfortunately, is not just to be blamed on people that are out there doing a lot of things that we don't like and committing crimes against us of different versions, but it's because we as a people, we the people, uh, have um, stopped paying attention um, to what Thomas Jefferson called civic affairs. Uh, 250 years ago, this man, with such prescience and understanding, said that when the people stop paying attention to civic affairs, you and I, uh, Congress and assemblies, judges and governors, and I now add presidents, shall all become wolves. And so it's our loss of character that is now manifest in the character and the loss of character that our leaders are demonstrating. And so one of the cures for the tyranny that's happening is that we have to re-inherit and start practicing all of those rights and freedoms that are talked about in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And the more we do that, then the leaders that emerge from us demonstrate the same things. But as long as we accept the artificiality and the lack of true character, then the people that come along to lead us are just going to do what this current tribe is doing, taking advantage of us, you know?
Well, and as you say that, it strikes me that that's actually incredibly empowering, that we're not victims of what's happening.
Yes, yes.
And so because of that, there's actually something we can do about it.
Which is the thing that makes this time so significant because it would be so easy to just now lay back and say, "Well, there's nothing I can do about it," and well, in 2 years or 4 years or 8 years or whatever, there'll be change. Well, no, we can orchestrate our change today. Uh, and most people, I think, read the Declaration of Independence in school a few times, and then it goes in a drawer or back in the brain. But the Declaration of Independence is so clear. There's a paragraph that says, whenever any government violates life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then it's the right and responsibility of the people to abolish or alter that government. That's what they based the American Revolution on, one of the most successful revolutions in history, um, because it not only was struggling against something, but it was for something. It already had the image of what governance by, for, and of the people would be. And that's what made the American Revolution relatively short and very successful. Um, so this whole idea of character and the fact that we control that, um, just like today, people don't know how to defend. What are we going to do about this or about that? Well, we have all of our rights and privileges. And Merlin talks about those throughout in the different laws, the law of humility, the law of forgiveness, the law of um, silence, the law of uh, self-inquiry. All of these laws are ways of reconstructing the character and the moral and ethics stability of our society, if
So
that
this
makes sense.
book is, yeah, I mean, this book is really a, a guide
Yes,
to re-embodying that sense of character, to
and that
embody our
sense of
true character.
well-being and mutual
Yes.
respect and the valuing truth and honor, um, and the things that used to be part of the code of the warriors of the time, and of the leaders of the time. And even now that we're at war, with this terrible war that's going on, um, we're not even we're not even dealing with it with character that knows that there are some things that have to happen in war that we always regret after the fact, but we don't gloat on it. We don't take pride in destroying people's lives and whatnot. And that's because the people that are doing that are disconnected from their own hearts and from their own connection to the consciousness of humanity. And it's sad, but it's, as you say, it's not irreparable. We can start today doing the things that we know that that little voice inside always says turn left instead of turn right, or say yes or say no. Uh, and if we do that, our lives improve and our society improves.
Yeah, I was really hearing that. I got the chills as you were saying that, and even before you said it out loud, I was hearing that, that it's that connection to our hearts and then that connection to the heart of humanity
Yeah.
that comes through this.
And it's not fantasy. For an example, one of the laws is the law of humility. And most people think, oh God, when you're humble, you're weak. The truth is, it's the foundation. Humility is the ultimate strength. It's like nonviolence is the ultimate weapon. um, Gandhi. Most people think of this guy, little guy in India in a loincloth, and that it's a political tool. It's not a political tool. It's a fundamental strategy of life. And when we come from that place of nonviolence, we're invulnerable. We're incredibly strong. We're not weak. Anyway, so
No, this is great. I mean, so again, it's these conversations become like a North Star that we can really look to guide us through these times and back to our own hearts, back to our own souls, and again, just this heart of humanity. Um, and one of the things that you say in this book, we don't have a leadership shortage, we have a wisdom deficit.
yeah. Um, Leaders who believe, and the unfortunate thing in our time, leaders believe that they're in charge. Legitimate leaders lead from behind. They don't lead out front with preposterous egos and the feeling that they know it all and that they're the only ones who can make it work. Real leaders recognize that their role is to uplift people, is to celebrate them, is to give them the opportunity to discover what they know so that when the leader isn't around, they're more than capable of doing all the things that they need to do. I think it's why the Hopi elders have told us that this is a time where we're the ones that we've been waiting for.
Mm.
Uh, that we have to stop this looking outside of ourselves, believing somebody's going to come along and save us. We have to save ourselves. We have to save ourselves by recognizing that we have to make the choices. We have to be the ones that hold our government and our elected officials and our corporate leaders accountable. These people think they're running the show. Um, so, uh, in so many ways, in the corporate sector today, uh, companies and their leadership are getting more and more removed from their customers. And there are more layers of electronic this and voice systems and AI systems between they and their customers. They forget that without us, they don't have a business. They think that they're in charge, so they don't have to pay taxes. They can charge what they want. They can, you know, and it's our job. We have a government that has five estates: uh, the administration, Congress, the judiciary, the free press, and we the people. The we the people are the fifth estate. And our job is to keep the rest of the estates in line, to oversee what they're doing. And when we don't like them, what they're doing, it's our obligation to change it. In a democracy, most of the time through voting and through whatnot, but sometimes it's through protest, and sometimes it's through altering or abolishing the government. And we can do that. We don't have to go to the barricades with guns anymore and jeopardize our lives and other people's lives. We do it nonviolently by exercising our rights and freedoms, and one of them is economic protest. So through work slowdowns, through boycotts, through general strikes, through temporary tax withholding revolts, we are the ones that have to say to our government, "You're off track." And if you don't get back on track, we're going to exercise more economic protests for longer periods of time until you realize that you either get back in line or you resign. That's what happened in Hungary recently. Not very long ago, it happened in Moldova, where 600,000 people came out into the main city square, and they said, "We're going to stay here until you resign." And about 2 weeks later, the government got on a plane and flew out of the country. And although it seems like that could never happen here, if we exercise our economic rights of protest, if we use the money that we spend every day to support companies and organizations that do good and prevent companies from making profit who don't, we can change the whole nature of our society. And that's one of the things that Merlin talked about, not in modern times, but in the times in which they were living.
Well, and so let's talk about this because there's so many things that Merlin is here to remind us of. And obviously this incredible empowerment and power that we possess by exactly the things that you've spoken of. Um, and I guess, part of it is who or what is Merlin here to remind us of inside of ourselves?
Uh, well, I think that each one of the 21 laws is one of the things he's here to remind us of. So it's humility, it's commitment to truth, it's some of the other things that I've mentioned. But most important, he's here to remind us that the wisdom comes from here, not from here. um, that here is what processes it. It this teaches us how to use it in the instances and gives us the discernment to know when we're on track and off track, to analyze the whole experience and integrate it. But the real wisdom comes from here. And I don't know anyone that doesn't say, well, Every once in a while I get a prompt to do this or a little voice tells me to do that. That's you. That's the wisdom of who you are that's speaking. And the more you're willing to pay attention, I've never, ever not benefited from listening to that voice. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it creates separation from people in the world around me, or it gets me in trouble with an authority that doesn't want to hear the truth, or whatever that happens to be. But I never regret it. Um, and that's the feeling that I got about the society that Merlin was teaching Arthur to become king of. Um, that these were the values that he was indicating, that Arthur's job wasn't to lead, it was to serve. Arthur's job wasn't to dominate, but was to inspire and encourage and invite and give people the means for making life more meaningful. And the same with the use of resources. Um, the wisdom traditions uh, are the only thing that even still give us what's left of this tattered earth to live on. Uh, the idea that you don't exhaust all the resources, that you don't, out of greed, take every mineral out of the earth or every ounce of oil that actually is in the veins of the earth. You don't want to deplete the veins. Um, uh, and uh, in ancient times, they moved hunting grounds so that they wouldn't exhaust the grain, and the 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 fabrics and the things they used to make their clothing with and whatnot. And when there wasn't enough, everybody benefited from what there was. We have a completely upside down and backward perspective. It's the hell with people who don't have what they need. I want more.
Mm.
I mean, that's another one of the laws of sufficiency, the law of enough. How do we know when enough is? Um, and how do we then recognize that what the thing that we're creating so much wealth from are the natural resources that belong to all of us? Um, they're not the private property of somebody who owns the well or who owns the road or whatever the hell its stupid thought process is. Um, and if you think about it, uh, when I think of what the power that we have as authentic individuals, I feel so much better about life. I'm not a victim. I'm capable of doing extraordinary things um, because I don't have to be limited by the thought forms that other people are limited by. Helen Keller said, "There's no such thing as security and safety. Life is a daring adventure, you know? Um, and to have that sense as we walk around the world, instead of living under this dystopian cloud of hate and violence and separation, it doesn't make any sense. So for me, Merlin's a key to happiness and enthusiasm and power and joy. Um, and it's a guide. It's available to everybody. You know,
Well, and I love what you said too about, we have to be maybe still enough, these are my words, but to listen, to access that wisdom, that it is available to all of us, that we
and
can all get this guidance.
one of the principal things Merlin taught Arthur over and over and over again is that you have to use your eyes not just to look, but to see. Your ears, not just to hear, but to listen, and always your heart, not just to feel, but to open, to surrender, to understand. Because if you're looking and seeing and hearing and listening, then it's really hard to be conned, you know, because a con always sounds tinny like the stuff that is on the news every day these days. It's just so absurd that anybody with an ounce of common sense says, "What the hell is that?" You know? Uh, and so in some ways, we can regain not only our perspective, which is another of Merlin's laws, but our sense of humor, uh, and our recognition that a fool is a fool, uh, and a clown is a clown, you know? And the old saying is, if you elect a clown, expect a circus, you know? And we sure are living in one.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. So talk a little bit more, if you will, George, about this, about how we create this inner mastery, if you will, and then move it into outer responsibility and action. What does that
Well,
look like?
um, well, not only Merlin, but a lot of the great books of wisdom suggest that the way that we learn to become masters is in our early years, we learn to deal with this and its relationship to the world. And then the next ring that we get to deal with is the ring of the family. And then the next ring is the immediate community. And at each one of those stages, the lessons that we learn here within ourselves and from people that we love, hopefully, although that's certainly not always the case. Um, but when we find, even as a child, uh, I knew the difference between somebody bullshitting me and somebody telling the truth,
Mhm.
you know? Um, and, uh, and so I think if you hold on to that from the beginning and you use that as a base and you try not to violate that, because the more you violate that, the more that question of moral and ethical character begins to slip away. Um, but it's how do we do it? Through practice. Uh, Most of us learned. Who was that wonderful author who used to talk about the fact that everything you need in life you learned in kindergarten?
Oh,
You
yes,
remember?
yes, I do. Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. Everything I need. I can't remember his name, but I totally know. Yeah, yes, who you're talking about.
And that's just a fundamental truth.
Yeah.
We learn wonderful things, many of us as children. And then along the way, we cheated on this and gave up on that and didn't practice this very much. And before long, you're in a world where the only way you can survive is by practicing what the world seems to be saying rather than what you know in your heart is true. Um, so, um, Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself because everybody else is taken." Uh, and that's true. And yet we live in a world where so many people are trying to be somebody else,
Mm.
you know? Um, and it's this kind of it's the same common sense that's in our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. I mean, this crazy Supreme Court that's making up rules for itself and for the country. Uh, they're supposed to be the interpreters of the original documents, and yet there isn't nothing in the intention in the original documents that says that I have to pay taxes and then somebody else can be a thief. That's not written in the Constitution, you know? It's common sense. And that's what I think the true wisdom of the world. It's why the indigenous people, originally, when they were encountered by uh, settlers from Europe and all the they're thought to be simple. They're not simple. They're
Mhm.
magnificent um, because they're rooted in truth, and truth doesn't have to equivocate. It doesn't have to justify. It doesn't have to do any of those things. And so we look down on people that we think are simple, and yet in the end, they're our salvation. Um, And that's what's so miraculous. And that's one of the things that Merlin again and again and again advised Arthur of. And it's why, even though some people think Merlin's a myth and Arthur and the Round Table never existed, it has had more impact on history and on culture and on societies than a number of the physical manifestations that the only thing we got from was domination and subjugation and slaughter and a variety of other things, you know? And that's another thing that Merlin talks about. He talks about the fact that um, people are confined in a sense of what they think is reality because their five senses seem to support that. But as anyone who meditates or does yoga breathing or has had any of the ancient plant-based medicines learns, uh, there are multiple levels of reality that are here all the time. And you can pierce those veils when you do so with surrender and innocence. Whereas if you hold on to the rigidity of your beliefs, you stay confined in this little prison called reality, you know?
Well, and I'm hearing, clearly, as we do this within ourselves, and really honor that place within ourselves, it's that thing of as we create change within us, we're gonna see it
Yeah.
manifest.
Yes. And you know, because you work with beliefs so much and inviting people to change those beliefs or reprogram themselves in many ways. Um, uh, we don't if we come into life forgetting that it's going to be a school the whole way, you know, when it's not going to end when we graduate from junior high school or college or even graduate school. That's only the beginning. And yet some of us are still confined within the same beliefs we had when we graduated from high school or college or graduate school. They're just they're just milestones on the road, and as long as we keep learning, as long as we keep changing and evolving, then life really does, as Helen, uh, I mentioned her before.
Aaron Keller, yeah,
Yeah, Helen Keller said, "It's a life is an adventure." That's what we're here for, and it
exactly.
doesn't stop, as you know, through your book and your own experience. It doesn't stop when you die. Do you know that the average person spends 3/4 of the money they spend on healthcare in the last several years of their lives doing procedures that do not improve the quality of life appreciably? And it's all because our medical profession is afraid to recognize that death is not the end. Death is good for business, scares the hell out of people, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Whereas people who have altered states of experience or near death experiences tell us that it clearly is not the end, as most of the great saints and yogis and teachers have told us. And if we could just eliminate that one fear from society, it would change the whole premise of life.
And what do you think would happen, George? Because as you said, I wrote so much about this in my last book as well. And I really do believe as we let go of that fear and we befriend this moment, that this moment becomes sacred and it does become a point of power.
Yes. And we don't have to be greedy. We don't have to try to get it all in. We don't have to uh, uh, um, uh, absorb every possible thing and somehow or another believe that if we don't have enough money, if we don't have this or don't have that, we're a failure, and then we're going to die, and then we're going to regret, and then we're going to be punished someplace. Uh, you know, I I I smile so many times when Anita Morjani is a friend, and when she describes the experience she had with her father. after he passed away and when she was on the other side for a brief time. And all the things that they had both thought were so important while they were alive, they laughed about. Um, all the things we kill people for or slaughter whole populations, uh, are so absurd. But as long as we're confined within this thing, uh, and we're not able to see beyond that or feel beyond it, we're toast, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and that's what this terrible time that we're living in, this ugly, ugly period of history, um, where people are sharing their violence and their sense of separation, and they're defining other people as aliens and killers and rapists and all the rest of it. It's such a cartoon if you think about it. And yet, right now, it's destroying our country. And it's only when we wake up to the things we've been talking about and recognize that we can send those people on the way with economic protests and with legitimate practice of our unalienable God given rights. We can put these people on a plane to the nearest banana republic, and they can go on living in their fantasies and delusions as long as they want, but they should not be subjecting us
Mhm.
to all of that. And that's one of the freedoms I believe that the wisdom that Merlin talks about gives us. It reminds us of how incredibly powerful, capable, and extraordinary we are.
That's a mic drop moment. That is it. That is it. Well, and so, George, I wanna make sure before we wrap up this incredible conversation that we talk about the next book that you have coming out and the importance of that book because these 2 books well, and your book before this, We the People.
Yeah. So we the people, democracy's best and last hope, is like a short uh, primer on what we can do to uh, resist tyranny in a lot of very specific things. And then Merlin takes it from another perspective as we listen to his conversations with Arthur and Adrin, who's the scribe, who's also a remarkably wise being. It gives us a chance by stepping back and thinking about the 12th century in Wales. It gives us another perspective on the life that we lead. And those 21 laws can indeed make a huge difference in our time. And then a couple of years ago, I had a major health crisis, uh, an undiagnosed infection turned sepsis. Um, I almost went over the line twice during the 2 weeks I was in intensive care. And I began having these lucid dreams um, that both projected ahead as to things that were coming and compared them to things of the past. Um, and then I started getting this torrent of poems and song lyrics. With, I mean, for 2.5 weeks, honestly, I couldn't do anything without having a notebook in my hand. It was just a continuous flood, and most of the poems and song lyrics that came through were already formed. I just did a little fine tuning, and they were all about democracy and life in these times and ways to dissolve and deal with tyranny. And one of the ideas was that what we needed to do was begin to use the languages of the heart and pay more attention to the troubadours of the heart, musicians and performers and poets and authors and dancers and filmmakers and artists uh, and other people who do worldly things but are also troubadours of the heart. I mean, at the moment, Springsteen is being a
Mm.
troubadour of the heart, and now Joan Baez and a lot of other people are coming into it. And the idea is it's called the Great American Anthem Roadshow. My belief is while we're focusing on the midterms and with the goal of unseating a lot of the unsavory characters that are screwing up our country. Um, we could also be getting together with the troubadours of the heart who already have large audiences, who are already on tour, who are already do events at their local churches as well as on television. And with these troubadours of the heart, singing songs that touch our hearts, that awaken us, that remind us of who we are, that we're not different, we're really much more alike than we are different. Um, that we can rebuild an energy in our society um, that will make us bold and courageous and strong and also loving. Um, and that power is the power I believe that's going to save us, and that music is the language that's going to help us do that. So the book is an invitation to troubadours of the heart and to people of the heart all over the world to remember that this is the time to come together, to remember who we are, to remember how precious what we have is, so that the stuff that's going around us, we begin to see clearly for what it is. We begin to hear what it is. And it sounds tinny and empty and futile by comparison to the things we see when we look around an audience and everybody is having a wonderful time and everybody is uplifted by the music that people have been writing for centuries that's all about love and life and value. And so my hope is that this book will catalyze even more people like Springsteen and the people Taylor Swift and people that are out there doing a lot of good. Invite them to get the hell out of their studios and get back out on the road and bring people together and help heal our nation. So that's what the next book's about.
Such an incredible vision and such a tangible reality as I
Yeah,
hear
it
you
is
speak
tangible.
of it.
You know? And for any of us who were blessed to be alive in the '60s and even some in the '70s, and we experienced what music did at that time, uh, and uh, how Woodstock changed a generation. When I say that, I think of my good friend Mike Lang, who created all that. And I always get filled up when I think of what so many people in that time inspired. They ended a war. They changed the values that a lot of people had. They opened a lot of people's heart. A lot of us got in trouble, you know, with some of the things we did at the time. But it was a magnificent time. I would I would wish that on any future generation, um, and I think it's right here for us now. Um, I I think that the hearts of Americans are really um, desperate to feel that joy again. And the other good thing about America is that even though these people are trying to turn it into an autocratic kleptocracy and a white Christian theocracy that doesn't have any other parameters to it, I think the mistake they've made is to forget that freedom and liberty is in the DNA of Americans.
And that it's time for a revolution of
Yes,
remembrance.
yes, yes, it is. Yeah.
Love this. George, this is such a joy, such an honor to be with you and to share this conversation with you. How can people find out more about you and how can they get these books?
Well, they get We the People and Merlin on Amazon, both in Kindle and paper. And I think I'm going to now do a hardcover on Merlin just for people that still like hardcovers. Um, and um, I have a new Substack, and I can't even give you the the handle for it because it's just being launched, but it's called The Writing on the Wall.
Mm.
Uh, and it's all about the things we can do right now, practical, real, tangible things that we can do. Take back our sovereignty, re-inherit our country, and send these fools on their way.
Beautiful. And coming up, Conversations with Merlin is gonna be on Audible.
Yes, we're just finishing that up, and probably in the next 30 days it will be up and ready. And
So exciting.
I just want to celebrate you and the work that you do, Stephanie, because I know that you bring wonderful people to the people who are on your lists and listen to you and watch you around the world. And I just encourage you to keep doing all this great work that you're doing.
Thank you, George. Thank you for sharing your love, your heart, and your spark with all of us.
Yeah. Blessings.